Hello, and welcome back to the Wizard's Respite Sanctorum, the show where we deep dive into all things TTRPG, the best hobby in the world. We got a really fun show. We're going to stop off with news in the RPG world, and then dive into some more mechanical trends that we're starting to see pop up in the industry. But before we dive too much deeper into that, I'm not alone. As always, I'm here with my co-host from Old Man Gaming, Zachariah. Zach, how you doing, man?
Hello everybody. I'm doing all right. It's been a busy day so far, but I'm ready to talk about some nerdy stuff.
It's always a good relief to be able to talk about nerdy stuff and
Indeed.
get out of the
Indeed.
the real life of it. Well, I got some news. I did a little bit of research on stuff that seems to be happening in the industry, things that affect our favorite hobby. A couple of things that are kind of interesting. So this is actually Starfinder from Paizo is kind of making some interesting moves. So like they're introducing a Warframe, and I think this is going to be crossing over in multiple different areas with your focus on video games, Zach. Because Paizo has a couple of things video game related. So Warframe, which I'm not super familiar with, is getting an IP in the Starfinder RPG game. And if for those that don't know, Starfinder is a RPG that is a little bit more or very much more sci-fi related. Has like the mechanics that people might be a little bit more familiar with other Paizo
It's like
systems.
It's like Pathfinder but space, right?
Basically. Now, I haven't played it, but that's my understanding. Seems like a lot of
Don't
fun.
at him, everybody.
I do like
Don't
sci-fi. Yeah, the thing is, sci-fi is super hard to play sometimes, and it's mostly like getting the right table together, getting the right folks together that wants to jump into sci-fi instead of, most people who come to the table are interested or know of fantasy. So breaking out of that, you're going to have to find people who have already played fantasy, who are already familiar with RPGs. And so now your pool is getting whittled down a little bit. Because everybody who thinks about RPGs are going to think fantasy. They're going to think D&D if they haven't already been in the hobby. So it's a little harder to get into the sci-fi stuff. I love sci-fi. I love playing sci-fi. They're bringing the Warframe to this sci-fi system. Are you familiar with Warframe?
I have played Warframe quite a bit for many years, off and on. We have some content on my channel with Warframe. I did some streams. I also one of my brother's music videos that I make was to Warframe footage. So
Oh, cool.
yes, I am very familiar with Warframe. I think Warframe is one of the, if not the greatest game as service model game ever. It's free to play. Most everything in the game is earnable in the game, but you can also spend money on it should you wish to get things faster, go through things quicker. And then there's certain cosmetics that tend to be things you have to buy or grind for a really long time. But Warframe is extremely good at meta storytelling, and they're kind of like the precursor to the stuff that Helldivers is doing, in my opinion. But yes, I'm very familiar with Warframe. I like Warframe. I love that company, Digital Extremes. So they actually have a fantasy game coming out, weirdly enough, called Soulframe. But one of the things that you said about sci-fi, we've talked about this on the channel before. Everybody knows what an orc looks like in their head. It's very easy to picture. It's very hard to explain aliens. You have to have clear visuals of whatever you're doing in sci-fi, whereas you don't necessarily have to have clear visuals in things like fantasy or even like modern day stuff that you're talking about. Other stuff like the Pirates game that I'm doing. You don't really have to have clear visuals to picture pirates and sailors and stuff. Sci-fi gets tricky because it is all about weird stuff. Stuff that maybe only you see in your head, conveying that to your audience is very tricky. So I think it's perfect for IPs. I think it's a perfect place for IPs. It's a perfect place to use IPs. Like, I want to do a sci-fi game in the Warframe universe. Everybody knows, everybody who sits at your table has probably played Warframe and know what they're dealing with, you know? It's one of the reasons...
And if they don't, it's easy to look up.
It's easy to look up. There's images online. It's one of the reasons that, like, when we were talking about the whole IP thing, the last couple of things...
Right.
I would much rather these IPs not make entire new games, but attach themselves to systems and core rules that already exist, such as Starfighter. Now, Starfighter is like Pathfinder, which is like D&D, so I want nothing to do with it, but... I think what's really interesting is Warframe is specifically made to be extremely fast. So, like, when you're going through a mission, you are flying through a mission. Like, you're like Mechanized Space Ninja is kind of the whole, like, crux of it. Like, your Warframe is this, like, mechanized ninja space suit. It is hard to tell what's going on the screen sometimes. Making that into a D20 system, whether you like D20 or not, I think everybody can admit that it's very slow and methodical. I think that's tricky, so I'd be very interested to see how those rules come out.
Yeah, that's a real good point. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting branch, and like you've said, we've discussed many times in the past, IPs getting their own systems, unique systems, versus being assimilated by an existing system. Yeah. And it sounds like Warframe has like enough of a at very least, it kind of sounds like where Warframe came from is going to fit better in a smaller RPG company and system, as far as, you know, expression of the IP. You know, getting your people out there and your information, your alien worlds out there.
You know, it's weird. We should probably do just a full talking point about it at some point in the future, but we keep hitting this in the news, and it's kind of the, when do you make something completely its own system, like fresh from scratch, and when do you just attach that IP to something else? I think Aliens, like say the Aliens universe, could very easily be attached to any system, because it's like, there isn't, other than the fact that it's horror, there isn't a specific feel to what you're trying to do that would require systematic explanation. Warframe, on the other hand, I actually feel like you could do your own system for Warframe, because you would need to somehow get the feel of that incredible... I'll send you some videos. It's incredibly fast-paced gameplay. So, like... And nothing says Mechanized Space Ninjas less than a 2-hour fight.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so, a big long slog, right?
Yeah. So, like, that makes me nervous. That, all of that aside, I think that, like it is better to maybe give established sci-fi genre more grounds to play in than necessarily to just make your own system every time an IP wants to exist in the TTRPG space. Right.
And depending on the IP and who you're doing with in this situation, you know, it may not always be exceptionally available for some people to move their IP, or some groups to move their IP into their own unique mechanical system, and they have to do it. In this situation, it seems like Warframe's got enough of a name where they might be able to do that, but they're not. They are going with Starfinder, so it'll be interesting. I definitely am looking forward to reading that book, and hopefully maybe even getting to a table together to play at least a one-shot or a mini campaign or something.
That would be cool. I would definitely run a Warframe game. I know enough about the lore to do it.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if I could do the system, but I could definitely do Warframe.
We'll see. We'll see where that
maybe
goes.
In the future.
Yeah. There's so many projects right now. Okay. So aside from Warframe and Starfinder, Starfinder is in the news for another reason. In addition to getting Warframe, a video game that is being moved into the RPG space, Starfinder, the core system, is actually getting moved into the video game space as well.
Nice.
Apparently, Pezos has announced that they're teaming up with Epic Tellers and adapting Starfinder into a single-player turn-based RPG system. It was announced. The Kickstarter was announced relatively recently. I believe it was the last couple of weeks. But it's starting to really trend, and people are starting to get a lot of traction behind that Kickstarter. It's going to be a turn-based system. They can build a party. Players can build a party in the video game of all of these different characters, different champions, and go from there to either explore an open world or follow the campaign. It is a Kickstarter, so we don't necessarily have like solid ideas on what the end product is going to 100% be, but it's going to be an RPG, so there's got to be a lot of flexibility, like mini side missions, stuff like that. Thought that's kind of interesting that their Starfinder is not only assimilating a IP from a video game, but it's also now taking its core IP and turning it into a video game.
You know what's extremely strange on the video game front? Two famous CRPGs, which is the tactical turn-based that you were talking about, are Pathfinder games. They're Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous, the sequel. Those two games are up there with like Baldur's Gate 3 for CRPG gold. And they were created by Owlcat Studios, which is a really good CRPG publisher. They also publish a lot of grimdark Warhammer stuff. They did Rogue Trader, and they've got a couple other ones coming out. I am really intrigued by the fact that the Starfinder CRPG is not going to be done by Owlcat, because Owlcat has produced two absolutely award-winning CRPGs through them already.
Do you think, like, the other CRPGs that you mentioned also sounded like fantasy-based? Do you think that the genre being sci-fi is a reason for the pivot?
I mean, maybe, but in fairness, like I said, they're very famous. The other thing they're famous for is, the grimdark stuff, Rogue Trader and stuff. And grimdark is sci-fi. I mean, it's arguably a hybrid between sci-fi and fantasy, but it's definitely got sci-fi elements, so I don't know why they would switch. I mean, there is also something to be said about, development schedules and stuff like that. These games take a lot of time. Smaller studios are only ever developing like one game, maybe two, at a time, and they take like 5 years. So maybe they went to them and they were like, hey man, we got too much going on already. But it's very interesting that two of the most famous CRPGs there is out there on the market were Pathfinder games. They were developed by a different company.
That is interesting. Now, are you familiar with Epic Tellers as the publisher of this new Starfinder game?
I can search them up and see if I know.
I did a very quick little wiki search on them. I didn't I'm not the video game guy here, guys. So I didn't really recognize what I was looking at, unfortunately. But from my understanding is, they're kind of indie, and which whether or not you consider Peso indie or not. But
if you search for Epic Tellers Entertainment, the only thing they have is Starfinder Afterlight. So I think that they are. This is it. Like, this is their foyer.
Okay.
Let's see about us. They're founded in Barcelona in 2023. Yeah, there's no necessarily. I don't see any other games that they have ever made.
Okay.
So I think that I mean, I am sure they're working on something other than just Starfinder. But they haven't created it. They're relatively brand new. So
okay. Okay, so yeah, there's I didn't find anything particularly in the news as to why they were going with Epic, but there's all I saw was like the hype engine. Like
Yeah, oh
this
yeah.
really cool new game is coming out, and look who we got playing, like putting it together, Epic Tellers, and they're gonna do a narrative focus, blah blah blah.
We're
I
getting
just
into the
thought it
weeds
was
on
kind
it,
of
but you can actually, we're getting into the weeds on this, but I'm looking it up right now. You can actually already wishlist it on Steam. Oh, they have proof of concept. Oh yeah, they have actual like footage of the game on the Steam page.
okay, dope. So you can kind of see how it goes, the gameplay and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
You can get an idea of what you're doing. That's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, but there is no announcement for like when it's coming out or anything. But usually, what happens in this is it's pre-alpha, is all the footage that they have listed here. So yeah, they have a concept for a game probably, and they're just trying to get some money together to take it across the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I'll keep my eye
So
on it for you if you want. I'm gonna put it on my wish list.
yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. If we got Baldur's Gate, which was making some waves,
Yes.
and obviously, like it hit hard.
Yeah.
And now you have Paizo, which is considerably a smaller company than Wizards of the Coast, and the IP holder of that. It's pretty clear, like there's going to be a lot of crossover in the future between video games moving into the RPG world, and probably RPGs, as we are already seeing, not probably, but we are seeing some pretty big moves or like substantial RPG titles moving into the video game world with a lot of meat on their bones.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine this trend not continuing on. So for those who love this hobby and love RPGs on the video game front,
Yeah.
this is kind of cool stuff. This is cool stuff that everything is moving in.
Hey, when I was a kid, if you wanted to play a game, you made it up because there was like 3 games out there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you either made it up or you homebrewed it for another system. And now it's like all you have to do is do a search, and you probably have an RPG for the thing that you want. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Which actually is interesting that you bring that up. The next segment kind of throws me back to my childhood as well. The next news piece of news article throws me back to my childhood, and it started getting me thinking a little meta about this. So Masks is getting a second edition. Masks being the RPG focused on superheroes. It dropped in I think the original first edition dropped in 2016. I think the next one's coming out next year, or at least it's meant to. And it is focusing on more of a teen kids based superhero group. So that's where they're trying to streamline it. They're trying to trim up their mechanics, which every video RPG kind of tries to do at some point. And they're trying to re-engineer the skin of it to be more like Young Justice or Teen Titans.
Okay.
I thought this was kind of interesting for a couple of different reasons. Just a new Apocalypse Engine Masks coming out is interesting in and of itself. I think that there's they've had 10 years to see what works, what doesn't work within their system, what homebrewers out there are talking about, and aim their new system towards that direction. 10 years is a long time to hear about your game grow and change. And so that's interesting. But I also took a step back and was thinking, okay, 2016 is when Mask dropped. That was like pretty hot time for superhero genre as a entertainment genre. That's I think around the time where the Avengers were dropping. Yeah, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was real big shit. And then Masks come out. Right now, we're at a time where superhero movies are struggling in theaters. comic books are struggling, have been for freaking forever. I can't imagine like that ever really changing, but the genre is pivoting, I think, in a lot of ways, and they have to, because the superhero genre as a field is different now, and you're trying to get a different group of people in, and I think it's aiming towards a younger crowd. I think that's the idea.
That's very. I'm like, I don't have too much to say about this, thankfully, since our 10-minute news segment is turning into 20 minutes. But I think that, like, there's a lot of superhero games out there. It's hard to differentiate yourself nowadays, especially in the TTRPG space. I mean, the world's kind of oversaturated with superheroes right now. If it was me, I'd probably be going a different route, just because I think everybody's a little bit sick of superheroes.
Right. Yeah. So I agree. Like, I think that is definitely going to be, like, if they're making a Masks second edition, they're got to be doing something new. It'll be very interesting to see where the genre goes from there. But that's coming out next year, so we'll have a year to sort of see how this plays out. Maybe there's a pivot again. Maybe superheroes will be on the backswing. Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see one way or the other. So that's it for the news segments. Are you ready to dive into our real talking point here? So we briefly discussed this. Essentially, we're going into mechanics again. We're going to dive into the nature of certain types of mechanics that are across several different games, and I believe what has been kind of like. So RPGs in general have a loose terminology across the board, because everybody will take a mechanic and kind of make it their own. But the mechanic, one of the names for this mechanic is metacurrency. Pools is another one that I think a lot of people, that's the one that I would recognize and associate with this the most. But basically a resource pool or a metacurrency that allows your players or your characters to perform certain actions with a diminishing amount of resources as you progress through the story. So you have to budget, essentially, how much you expend on any endeavor depending on your individual pool of resources. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I don't think we kind of came up with this right before we went live, so I don't think we clarified exactly what we're talking about here. Because, like, does this include, like, luck points, or are we talking about systems that specifically build off of just pools?
So the pool system, kind of both. Okay. So the pool system is kind of making a lot of waves. The big thing that's really splashing the water right now is Daggerheart. Yes. That's kind of the talking point on everybody's lips, and they have a hope fear die system that apparently is very much centered in this pool system. Like, it's very narrative focused. But luck points is another, really good example of this. Fate points, for the system that I'm more familiar with, Fate is another system where you have a certain number of points. When they're gone, they're gone. So you have to figure out when and how important your action is in order to whether or not you want to use a Fate point. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of interesting. But, like, there are lots of, even in D&D 5th edition, they have luck points. It's a very minor feature that you get with a special loot, or I think halflings actually have that as part of their background. They only get like 2 a day. I mean,
it's pretty powerful in Baldur's Gate 3. Actually, halfling is like bar none the best class to play, or the best race to play. Weirdly enough, because of that, because you get to re-roll dice.
Okay, yeah.
Where to start on this one? All right. I'm going to start with just luck pool in general, like just pools in your game in general. From a game designer point of view, I really like special abilities. I've always liked special abilities. I think they're fun. They're interesting. I like to have people. I like people to look at my game and go, "Ooh, what am I going to pick? How am I going to build this out? What works with what? How does that work with that?" That being said, I think that the more mechanics you have, the easier it is to make abilities for those mechanics. If you don't have a pool of luck, then you are negating the possibility of having abilities that help your luck. It's simple.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that, like, from just a game designer standpoint, depending on the system that you're trying to accomplish, I think one or two pools are always there. Plus, just as a game master, watching players light up when they use those things or finding creative ways to use those things, it shifts the game. It makes things more interesting. It is these variables that can get thrown in at any time that can really twist stuff. And I think when you have that, it keeps everybody excited. You know what I mean? If somebody goes into a fight and they know they're going to lose, it's not an exciting fight. Okay? Like, the way you don't lose is have those kind of intangibles, like, oh, I've got luck. I could spend luck here and there and give myself extra rolls, give myself advantage, give myself extra skill rolls, re-roll certain things. Like, those kind of pool systems I think are awesome, and that may just be my video game sensibility coming, because video games are basically just nothing but pools. I will say this, though, and I don't want to talk too long, but the system that is based purely on the pool, I have tried to do this many times. Like try to do this where, like, hey man, here's all your stats. The numbers in your stat is the amount of dice you can roll in a session in that stat, and when it's gone, it's gone. You're exhausted. You can't get it back, whatever, until next session, or you rest, or however you do it. They always sound good to me when I'm writing them, and then when I play them, they turn into train wrecks. I don't know. And that might just be me, but like when it's all based on pools and pools of dice, it's a train wreck for me every time.
I can see that. Like, there are certain things I love about pools, but at the same time, there's something that makes me so nervous about it. When I walk into a game session, even as the GM, you're looking at, like, first off, you're not, as the GM, you're not keeping track of everybody's pools. Mm-mm. You got your own shit to deal with. Mm-mm. You can't play your players for them, but at the same time, you don't want to annihilate them.
Yeah, if they got pools, you got pools. So
exactly, but that also means, like, without a static system of some kind, you can't kind of know how far you can push your players.
Right.
So, if they have their pool is down to 10%, right, of what it could be, it's very different than a situation where their AC is something, their attack modifier is something, so you can throw this monster at them. You throw that monster at them, and their pool is down at 10%, you're going to get a very different outcome than if their pool was at 50%.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to really, like, especially if you have an even moderate sized table, keep track of where everybody is, so you could very easily, like, walk into a situation where you overwhelm your players.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of curiosity, is that what you've experienced when you've walked into these things?
Honestly, when I walk into a pool system, like, the mentality is different. So like if you're stepping into a game with a pool that has a static system, you know what I mean? Like, it's like here's your system, and then these points over here, they're for special moments or whatever, or cool moments, and you get to spend them in this way, right?
Yeah.
You're going to spend them, and you're going to have fun with them, because the rest of your stats are there, you know what I mean? If you walk in to a table, and it's like, this is your pool of dice, done, I don't want to spend anything. Or I spend everything, and I can't do anything anymore. Like, I don't like the idea, like, that kind of economy makes me extremely anxious in the moment.
And, it's interesting, because, like, there's something good about it, but it's also something bad about it. Because like what you said, that kind of economy makes you very anxious in the moment. But that anxiety creates a pressure that allows for creativity.
Yeah.
And so there's like a give and take right here. There's a weird balance that you have to like teeter-totter almost between putting too much pressure on them where everybody dies or the game is ruined or everybody's so anxious that nobody does anything. They just sit on their butts the entire time. Because then nobody wants to take a risk to open the door. Everybody sits there arguing for 15 minutes about who's going to open the door because their luck points are all down,
Yep.
But at the same time, it's that moment where everybody's anxious about opening the freaking door, so they tie a string to the door, and then they run around the corner, and then they tie the other side of the string to somebody's pet rat, and then they try to open the door around the corner with the pet rat pulling it, and the pet rat gets fried because there's, of course, a booby trap that electrocutes the pet rat. And then everybody spends the next game session trying to, mourn the pet rat. Random-ass crap like that.
That was an insane I know that's a bit much. Pet rat ramble right there. I gotta give you props. I think that, yeah, the only time I could see a purely pool-based system working for me would be a horror game. Like a one-off horror game where it's you're trying to survive, and when you're out of dice, your number's up. That I could see because that would build that anxiety. But other than that, I don't really want to sit at a table and experience that. Now, on the other hand, the game I'm working on right now has a ton of pools. It has a versatility pool. It has a luck pool. It has, quite a few pools to mess with.
Right.
I love them tacked onto that because you have your standard stats and then you're using those stats to manipulate the pools in some way. And I think that's really cool. It gives you more versatility. It gives you more ways to kind of think about your character. And when you're messing with a pool for actions and whatnot, it allows you to get really creative with the stuff around that, and that allows the player to get really creative about the stuff around that, and that gets them more into the character.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It also, if you have a lot of pools in this situation, allows for individuals who are unfamiliar with the world, with the game, maybe with the RPG, role-playing systems at all. First-time player to a table like this, to slowly build and discover what they enjoy. So if you have a pool system that's super combat-based, or maybe is a melee sort of physical versus maybe a magic system-based kind of thing, where you want to build mana, whatever the various pools do that allow you to interact with the world completely differently, that gives the player slowly an opportunity to build the pool they care about the most. And it helps the player teach themselves about themselves as a player. This is what I really like to do in the games. I like being a wizard. I like doing weird wizard shit. I'm going to build my mana. Versus, I like being a barbarian type or a fighter type or maybe a ranged type. Maybe there's another focus pool. Whatever, the wide range might be. I think Fate, in a weird way, does that really well. Because you can use fate points however you want, but you build your stats, and they have to be channeled into something particular. Narrative. So you have your pool, but they can only go in certain directions, and you can build out what direction your pool goes to. Yeah. So it might be more social-based, trying to talk somebody into giving up the goods, versus combat-based, trying to shoot everybody or hack off their heads. Right. That's one of the things I like about the various pool systems quite a bit. It allows that flexibility and self-reflection to really develop the type of player you like to be.
Yeah. I like when a pool system is tacked onto something else, personally. I just can't get over it. I've never played Fate. Not saying I wouldn't play Fate, but I like a system that... I like some tangible statistics there that you can mess with. I like when you build something, and Fate is different because when you experience in Fate, you're kind of earning stuff narratively. You know what I mean? Like, you got a new gun. That's why this got better. Or you bonded with your horse better, so you can ride it better. You know, stuff like that. It's a very narrative-driven, focused game. And I don't necessarily mind narrative-driven, focused games. It's just, I don't know. I think this is tricky too, because I don't like to say that I'm a stat guy, but like I think that like
yeah, because you're not a stat guy. We've had so many conversations on this show where you're like, okay, it's about the story.
The real answer is the hypocrisy knows no bounds from Sack Outsiders. I like stats. I like to think about the stats. I like to think.
Yeah,
I like
everybody
the stats
does
to help define my character or the characters that I'm going to be using in a game. When I'm looking at an ability section or a skill section, I'm picking out skills, and then I'm like, oh, that's why this character does this, and then but why does this character, you know what I mean? And it's forming those, it's lighting up those sections in my brain. When you just show me a system that's like, tell a story about a character, sure, I could do that. I could do that all day. I have more fun when I'm looking at the stats. And as a game designer, I am best when I am coming up with weird ass abilities. And I think you've seen that from the game that you're playing in most recently. Like there's fucking 100 and some abilities already in it. I'm adding more to them, and then there is a whole magic system that I just started. So like it is a very I'm best in that because I like coming up with I like taking the math. And then how am I going to twist the math? How is this character twist the math to fit his needs or her needs? And that's really fun. That's really fun.
Yeah.
You don't get that with most pool-based narrative-driven systems. Right.
That is kind of a trick with a lot of them. There's so. What you were describing to me right now sounded very familiar to like a metaphor that I've heard and used a few times. Is that the stat-based rule systems? The stats are there. It's kind of like coloring within the lines. The stats are the lines,
right?
And when you're really good at the game, you don't have to color inside the lines anymore. And what that really means is that you're not breaking the rules. You're thinking outside the box on how to use these stats.
Yeah.
So when you first start out, the lines are there to keep you in check and let you learn the game. When you're really good, the lines are there for you to think outside of and get real creative in the moment as a player. These pool systems are like very wavy lines.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Very watery lines. And that can be a little tricky.
Let me ask you a question.
Little tricky.
On the trickiness. I want you to think of your longest standing running session with the same people, same group. I want you to think about it. Is the system stat heavy or is it narrative driven?
Ooh. Longest running is definitely stat heavy.
See,
definitely stat heavy.
Here's the thing. I love narrative. I love narrative in games, and here comes the hypocrisy. I love narrative. I love narration in games. I am all about the story. The story matters first. However, there is a certain dopamine release in somebody's brain when stats go up. Yay. And that doesn't happen in the narrative games. So you have to have people who are extremely in tune with their character, and they want to see their characters like solve problems in advance. Or you need that stat to be like, I got to come back next week because I got to get my perception one higher so then I can see this thing or do this thing.
Right.
Like, the trick with RPGs is finding that happy medium between the narrative and stats go up, yay. And, like,
right.
That's the trick, because my most successful long-standing games are almost all stat-heavy games, or at least systems with tangible statistics that are less narrative focused, and that's That's a trick, you know?
It is. And so another really like fine line to work in here is the role of the GM in that problem.
That's true. That's true.
How good is the GM at the rules and narrative versus not narrative versus also how much the GM's rule is law?
Yeah.
You know, their word is law at the table. So what I'm trying to get at here is, you have a game like Fate where a GM who isn't very like solid on the rule system or isn't very good at negotiating issues or conflicts with players is going to struggle because they don't have necessarily a hard rule stat system to fall back on when a player tries to do some outlandish shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think too, and this might end up being a little bit off topic, but as a game master, I started working this into the game that I'm writing right now, which I'm really happy with, and it is goal-based experience points.
Classic.
Your character has a goal. It doesn't have to be the most long-term goal, but it's a goal. They are trying to earn that thing. So moving towards that thing earns them experience points. With that in mind, giving players stuff that their characters wants that maybe is bigger than you would think it is initially is a really great tool to keep them engaged. And you can do that in a narrative game. I have a character, and right off the bat, he was like, I'm going somewhere to receive a ship to take over a section of my father's trading company. That's a lot to just give a player right off the bat, but I gave it to him. I mean, they had to go through like the first kind of campaign to get there, but I gave it to him, and now he's in that. That makes them feel that sense of progression, that forward motion, that allows you to keep them engaged aside from stats go up, yay. And I think that with a narrative game, you have to do that. You have to take the things that the characters are trying to earn and show clear progression in their character's life. You know, when you play a D&D or something like that, it can devolve into you go into dungeon, you fight through dungeon, you fight monster, get loot, go back to town, go to dungeon again. And nothing's really, like, you're leveling up, but nothing's really, like, it's a story of the week almost sort of thing. Whereas with a narrative, you have to have a clear narrative you're trying to tell and making the players feel part of that. That will get you to where you need to be as far as engagement, I think.
I am so glad you said that. There are so many videos on YouTube right now talking about how to give your players narrative benefits without giving them stat like loot. So instead of a magic sword, they get a title over land. And that gives them more control over the narrative as opposed to more control over combat.
Yeah.
And that is so hard in a stat-focused, pool-light game.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many videos right now on how to do that on D&D. My feed, like, I think 6 months ago was full of D&D GMs talking about how to give different players rewards that have nothing to do with their stats or minimal stat bonuses. Another one that I saw that was really helpful for DMs on a stat-heavy game was a bonus that can only be used in very certain situations. You know, if you're negotiating because you are like ships, you're a captain of a ship and you're talking to other captains of the ship, maybe you get a bonus in that situation. If you're trying to negotiate, you know, the trade of like, you know, weaponry with a smuggler group, maybe you're not so great there, you know, because you're not, that's not your world. And that is so hard to do in a game like D&D where it's just that, but on a game like Fate, bro, like that is going to be your basically your, that's your meat and potatoes.
It's your bread and
that's
butter.
how the system works.
I mean, like I said, not to devolve more off topic, but like giving players ability to influence the story and not feel like they're just playing another level in a video game is the most important thing a game master can do, period. Obviously, Fate, games with pools, and narrative-focused games like Fate and Daggerheart, potentially, do that a little bit better than a stat-heavy game. Because stat-heavy games are very much like... The developers of that game are like, we don't know how to show you, so you stat go up, yay. Like, that's what we are riding on, stat go up, yay. You do this thing, you get reward, that's it. You know, that's your promotion, that's your built-in advancement. But, like, it comes down to the game master. You have to take your player and give them creative agency, no matter how scary that is, over the storyline. And, like, when I run a game, I am almost always proceeding to the finale. Like, the finale is always like 3 or 4 sessions in, and then we move to another finale, because I want to see what happens there and then how the players are going to influence it so that I can then craft the story around what they did, not what I want them to do. And, like, that's absolutely the essence of what you have to do as a game master. And I think you're right. Narrative games definitely facilitate that a little bit more. You don't have that fallback of... I mean, at the same time, you don't have the safety net of stats go up, yay.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's again, like this weird balancing act between the two, and it's so hard. I feel like the success of a narrative-focused mechanical game system, where, like Fate or pool-based system, where the pools are driven by the narrative and the increase, really depends, like, oftentimes very heavily on the game master, because of this imbalance. And so it's so tricky to really, like, find a happy balance between the two for you as an individual. You kind of have to just experiment.
Yeah.
You know, go out there, play a couple of different games, maybe listen to a podcast or two that play with these and see how other DMs do it, you know?
We definitely have.
Yeah. Daggerheart's a new one. I went ahead and purchased the game. I didn't want to read the PDF version. I wanted it in hand. When that comes in, I'll be able to, like, it's going to take forever. I don't think I'm going to be getting it for another 3 weeks. But when it comes in, we're going to have to do a deep dive on this pool system that apparently, you know, they have a hope die and a fear die. And the idea is if you succeed your roll with one of them, you succeed. But whether or not it's a good success or a shitty success depends on which one you succeeded with. So if your hope die gets it, awesome, you got it. If your fear die gets it, awesome, you got it. But something went real sideways in doing it.
That's interesting. I like that. We'll have to do a deep dive on it. But I truly think we covered this.
I think so too. I think we nailed it. I think this gives a lot of people some ideas in regards to the types of games that are out there. If you've ever played just a statistic game, what is it about the stats out there? Just a question for those of you who are listening that, you know, scare you maybe about these pool systems, or are you excited about trying a pool system? Do you want to give it a shot? I'm hoping that people out there have a little bit of an idea as to what they can get, you know, out of a pool, more narrative-based mechanical system that's less focused on stats and more focused on progressing the plot. And I think if you guys are out there listening, please comment. Please let us know. Before we wrap up today, Zach, is there anything you want to shout out?
No, we got a lot of stuff coming out. Lasso 3, BGL3 is the Lasso 3 playing Baldur's Gate 3 on my channel. It's a video game, but it's also kind of a TTRPG. Check that out. We got a ton of TTRPG actual plays coming out. Just check them out when they come out. And check them out on Wizards Respite too.
All I got is wizardsrespite.com. Please check that out. All of these episodes can be seen there. All of the content that we do on this channel with TTRPG can be seen there, as well as articles about running, building games, the whole genre as a whole, and of course, t-shirts, merchandise. So please go check that out. Hope everybody out there listening has enjoyed this, gets something out of it, and until next time, keep rolling them dice.